Hello and welcome back. Now we want to create another class, which is the auth middleware. Remember that for every request coming from the client, we need to check if the token that is coming from the client, because we are saving our token in the cookie session. You can see it right here. And then what that means is every request that will be coming from the client must have this token attached. Okay. And now we need to verify that this token is still a valid token. Okay. Now the verification we want to implement right here is the verification for the token between the client and the API gateway. Okay. Now we have a separate token for the API gateway and the other microservices. Okay. So now let us go ahead inside our services. I'll create a file. I'll call this auth-middleware.ts. Okay. So auth-middleware.ts. What we are going to do is simple. I think it's something we've already done before. If we check our shared, go to gateway middleware, we want to implement something like this. Okay. But we're going to create two methods this time. Okay. So in the auth middleware, I'm going to create a class. I'll call this auth middleware, and then let me export an instance. So export const auth middleware of type equal to new auth middleware. Okay, this is how you create an instance of a class. Okay, now we can go ahead. The first method is the verify method. So public verify user. Okay, so this method itself will take in requests from Express. It will take in response from Express as well, and then next of type next function from Express. It will not return anything. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to check if the request coming from the front end, that is the React application, if it has the JWT token. Okay, so if it does not have a JWT token, or it does not have a valid JWT token, then we are going to reject the request. Okay, so I'll say if no request.session.jwt, then I'll throw new not authorized error. And then here we can specify that, okay, token is not available. And then from which method is it coming from? Please log in again. And then gateway service. I can just call it verify user method error. Okay, so if no JWT property is found in the session, so we say token is not available, please log in again. And then the other parts we need to now verify. I will use a try catch. Let me copy this. If you want, you can add a different error message. Okay, you can add a different error message, but I will leave it this way. Okay, or maybe this is going to be gateway service verify user method invalid session error. Okay, whatever message you want to add. So const payload. Now remember, our payload is auth payload equal to, we need to import JWT. So import JSON web token. I think we can get verify method. So we can get the verify method from JSON web token. So we call verify. And now we need to pass in the token. Okay, so which is this. and then we need to pass in the token value. So config dot, I need to import this, config dot JWT token. Now, don't make the mistake of using the gateway JWT token. Remember, we have two properties. We have the JWT token and the gateway JWT token. The JWT token will be responsible for authentication between client, that is front end, and API gateway, and then gateway JWT token requests going from the client, from the API gateway to our microservice. So don't get those two confused, okay? And then this one, you can cast it. So cast as IAuth token. Okay, so here, remember, inside our library, we created a namespace. We added a property to a namespace. So if I go to auth, remember here we added this current user of type IAuth payload to the request namespace. Okay, so this is where we are going to set it. Okay, so if we have a payload, then we'll say request dot current use. You can see we have access to current user. Okay, is equal to payload. Okay, and then outside the try catch, we're going to call nest. Okay, outside the try catch, we can use underscore because we are not using that property. Okay, so what we've done here is simply checking that we have a valid token. If no token is available, we send this error message. If in the process of verifying the token is maybe the token has expired, we throw this error. But if the verification is successful, then in the current user object we have in our request, we set the payload, and our payload will contain ID, username, email. Okay, so this is the verify user method. We are not going to use it now because we don't have routes that actually require this. So the next thing is to check authentication. We want to check if the user actually has this current user. So I'll say public check authentication. Okay, and as usual, let me copy all of this, paste here, and then this will return void as well. So we say if no request dot current user, if no request dot current user, then let's throw an error. So we throw a bad request error. Let me copy one of these, then I'll change it to bad request error, and then I'll call nest. So this will be bad request error, and the message will simply be, let me change this part. So this will be authentication is required to access this route. Okay, so this route will always be called, this method will always be called if we want to access a particular route, and then we'll check, does the request contain this current user? Because here we are setting the current user, but we still have to check if it contains the current user, because if this is if this fails, it's not going to set any current user. And then here we need to check if the request contains the current user. If it doesn't, we throw this error, but if it does, we allow the request to proceed. So I'll say authentication is required to access this route, and then here check authentication method error. And this is just all we need to do inside this auth middleware. We are not using them yet. Once we start adding routes that requires authentication before they are accessed, routes like maybe related to the user service or the gig service, then I'll show you how we can use these two methods.